Hello my friends and welcome back to the rabbit hole. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing this incredibly hyped Bite Beauty Changemaker foundation. So in today's video, I'm going to take you guys through my experience. We're going to talk about the ingredients in this foundation. We're going to talk about swatches and comparisons in the shades themselves. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with whether I think this product is worth the hype. So let's start out with my experience using this foundation. So first off, the whole reason I bought this foundation is because I saw all the hype around it in the beginning. And I'm going to be honest with you, in terms of products that I want to continue to review on this channel, I think that foundation and primer are going to take precedence because when I review those, I can actually, apply all of this knowledge that I've gained over the years on skincare. These are products that sit so closely on your skin that the rules of skincare ingredients apply with foundations and primers the most. And it is true that from day one, when I looked at the ingredients of this foundation, I thought that actually does look good. I don't know if it looks great, but I felt the ingredients looked good. So I went ahead and bought this with my own money. I honestly did have a concern about the fragrance in this product because, well, first off, a lot of people are out here saying this product is unscented when it very clearly contains fragrance. You can see that word for yourself in the ingredients list. So I wanted to make sure that in this review, I'm consistent about applying this and observing whether I'm having any, negative effects from that fragrance. And thankfully, it's going well for me, but that's not a guarantee for everybody. So certainly something to keep in mind. So the first day that I wore this, you actually saw in my Ulta week number 3 video, that was the first time that I ever wore this foundation. So I figured I would just stick with what I do consistently. So I used the Juno Moonshine Primer on my forehead. I used the Urban Decay All Nighter, which I've been absolutely loving on my nose and on my cheeks. Then I used a brush, a sponge, and my very first impression from that first day was this foundation is all right. It did look really nice on. I was very impressed with the shade match, and it wore incredibly well. But I had a concern that since I was using this gripping primer, maybe I wasn't getting the full experience of the product. And then also I noticed that at the end of the day, I had a little more creasing than I get with some foundations that have kind of shot to the top of my personal foundation favorites list. So I guess to sum up my first impression, I wasn't unhappy with the foundation, but I was kind of in the back of my mind, or quite literally on Instagram, wondering, why is this getting the level of hype that it is? Because to me, that first impression was just kind of like any other new foundation. Yeah, it's good, but is it great? So the second day is when I did a wear test where I actually have before and after footage. I thought I would try it to use some primers that maybe more people do have in their collection. So I went with the First Aid Beauty primers, the Hyaluronic primer, and the Pores Be Gone, which I think is the only product in this video that I have gifted from a brand. These are really great primers. I stuck with the same methods. I used a brush, I used a sponge. I would say that I was going for light medium coverage at this point, and I kind of felt like it was the exact same experience as day one. It didn't really make any difference at all. For me, the foundation still stayed on my face really well. It looked fantastic hours later, and I even got a little bit of rain on myself that night. So yeah, I was happy, but I was still in this mindset of I like it, but I don't see why some people are saying that they love it. Especially if you're keeping in mind that this is a foundation that is $39.50. So on day 3, I decided to take the advice of one of you on Instagram. I will give credit, that is S22 Michelle, who said the difference for her was in applying this with her fingers instead of a brush. Well, I'm thinking in my head, I don't know if that's going to make that much of a difference, but here's a person who is describing my before. So far I'm like, it's fine. So I took her advice, I tried it. Again, I have footage of this particular day, and I was very, very impressed. Oh, and very critical to this method. Apply it with fingers and then blend it out with a sponge. Not only that, but I also used the Charlotte Tilbury Wonder Glow primer. I was really trying to think in my head, okay, Bite's audience. What would people who are interested in Bite Beauty potentially own in their collection of primers already? And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I felt, okay, Charlotte Tilbury, that makes sense. Something about that method of application smoothed out what I wasn't loving up until that point, which is the fact that I was getting some amount of creasing on my forehead and around on my smile lines as well. I don't have an after for that because I actually got kind of poured on, and I don't feel like that's entirely fair for a wear test. But for what it's worth, my makeup still looked decent at the end of the night, even though you could see I'd been rained on. Soaked, you know. So let's talk next a little bit about these ingredients. So honestly, the first thing that drew me to this foundation is that it is a clean foundation, but one that hasn't sacrificed silicones. I've said it before, and I'm clearly about to say it again. I think that silicones are a must in foundations because I've tried a bunch of these foundations that don't contain silicones, and they never become my favorites. They always get ranked towards the end of my foundation experiences. I talked a lot about that in my ranking foundations of 2019. So I kind of felt like, okay, well, that's good. That's good. The other clean foundations that I've liked, I'd have to say Ilia would be up here, and that one too contains dimethicone, as does this, plus a couple other silicones. As far as this being a clean foundation, I know that that is a big appeal for a lot of people. I don't make my judgment based on whether a product is clean or not. I just buy what interests me because, you know, I'm not really sure clean has a ton of meaning. Again, I respect it if that is your thing, but I just, what is the opposite? What is dirty makeup? Who is selling dirty makeup? If you buy a clean foundation with dirty money, is it now neutralized? Do you just have foundation? How does this work? All that said, I get what they're saying with the word clean. You know, they've avoided the obvious offenders, the parabens, phthalates, all of that. Also, it doesn't use phenoxyethanol, which is commonly used, but another ingredient that people might be concerned about. As far as this containing fragrance, I guess as long as the fragrance is of a natural origin, you can still say it's clean, but don't think that that means perfect for acne-prone skin. In fact, in my own experience, clean can go disastrously wrong. So it's kind of a mixed bag here. It's, well, if it works for you, it's going to work for you, but I do have some reservations on recommending it to people who have allergies or acne-prone skin, and yet I've been wearing it for the past week and it's been going fine. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Personally, I do wish it wasn't there. I wish the fragrance wasn't there. I wish the essential oil ingredients were not here. And then as far as the claims on this, they are claiming it has antioxidants, which it does, but in all fairness, it's very easy to find antioxidant-rich products. You basically throw some fruit ingredients in, boom, antioxidants. And then also the micellar technology claim. I'm just not really sure this one has a lot of meaning. It is not referring to micellar water as the cleanser. It's just referring to the shape that lipids take on, where they have the hydrophobic inside and then the hydrophilic outside. I gotta think that it kind of just sounds like fancy scientific sounding terminology because, again, I'm not convinced that has a ton of meaning, but I guess in application, yes, it does adhere very nicely to the skin, but I'm doubting that's the micellar technology, and it's probably more the silicones. And then as far as swatches, I did purchase the shade L25. They say that this is a warm golden shade. I disagree heavily. I don't think it's golden. I think it is a much more neutral shade, but when I looked at the neutral, I felt that that one was too pink for my undertones, too cool toned. So that's just my range that I can comment on. I don't know if that means that this is going to potentially be better for neutral to cool skin tones than for warmer, but I will show you some swatch comparisons. I feel like the main take home from all this swatching that I did is that it is absolutely amazing to me that I don't have two foundations that are the exact same color anywhere in my collection. That's impressive. If you're interested in a longer look at those, I'll go ahead and post those swatches to my Instagram and link that in the description box below. I also wanted to comment on which foundation this reminds me the most of, and that would be the Cover FX Natural Finish foundation. They're very similar in texture, the way that they apply, but I do think you can build up the Cover FX a little more. This one seems most optimal applied anywhere from light to light medium, whereas I feel with the Natural Finish, I apply it more from light medium to medium coverage. So we're caught up on the wear test for now, up until this one, where I've decided stick with what you like about it. We'll make a final opinion after all of this. So for my third and final wear test, I'm going to do what I've liked so far the most up against a new idea, a comparative method. So I'm going to be using primer. I know a lot of people don't use primer, but I love primer. I use primer every single day, whether I'm wearing makeup or not, so it makes sense for me personally to review this with primer. So since my favorite has been the Charlotte Tilbury Illuminating Primer, I'm going to try the Physicians Formula Spotlight Illuminating Primer. Let's just see if something at the drugstore works as well. And then also the Bare Minerals Prime Time. I wanted to use a silicone primer, so this would be kind of like using Lancome Le Base or Smashbox Photo Finish. And we'll see if the silicone helps to kind of fill in any fine lines. All right, first up, the Physicians Formula. And then the Bare Minerals. And then for the foundation, I'm sticking with the method that I liked the most, which is lighter coverage, applied with my finger, and then blended out with the sponge. I forgot to wash my sponge. I'll have to get up now. So this is look 3, the final look, the most natural look. Hopefully I can really observe this. That's the point for this particular trial. Although I feel like I accidentally made a really good example of the difference between the Glossier and the Milk aesthetic. I feel much more Milk personally. Glossier is when you're like, I'm not wearing makeup, but actually I am just a little tiny bit. Whereas Milk is, I'm not wearing makeup, but actually I am a little tiny bit. And I want you to notice it. And for the record, I'm not feeling this eyeliner, but we're gonna roll with it anyway because I made my choices this morning. So I'm in the car right now, sorry if it's shaky, but I'm noticing in the natural light how much of a difference there is in the foundation color and my neck. Yeah, that's where you see it, in the actual sunlight. So yeah, this is about 3 hours in. I can't complain so far. I'm getting a little bit of that creasing on my forehead, but nobody needs to know that. More food. So it has now been 8 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and call the wear test because I've arrived at my opinion of this foundation, but I did want to add a couple of quick notes regarding the wear today, since this was when I had the most time to pay attention to what was going on with this foundation. I gotta tell you guys what, it is a giant difference in how your foundation wears if you are running around outside in the humidity, in rain, versus indoors. This is the best wear for sure. So the first thing is I love illuminating primers with this foundation. I love the Physicians Formula over the Bare Minerals. I think what it is that the illumination seems to complement the natural finish of this foundation. It certainly is a skin-like finish, and it just makes it look like your skin has that glow from within. What a marketing phrase. But also, I kind of get it and I kind of see it. All that said, I do have a little bit more creasing on the side with the illuminating primer. The silicone primer did help here, but not here. I'm not really sure what happened here. And in terms of pores too, I do see more of my pores on this side than the side with the silicone primer, but I like the end look of this so much more personally. I just really like it. I also wanted to make sure I say the foundation does not oxidize or change color on me. It is prone to transfer in the first couple of hours, so make sure you don't touch your face for the first couple of hours that you have this on. See, not getting any transfer now. So is this foundation worth the hype? I'm going to say yes, if the problem you have with foundation is them not wearing well, because that's the best part of this foundation. It wears so well, and I think when it does start to wear off, it wears off evenly. You don't get that patchiness, you don't get, oh, I have foundation on everywhere except for here. It just fades very gracefully. I also think you might really like this if you enjoy clean and light coverage. Actually, light coverage. I feel like coverage is anything from tint, light, light medium, medium, medium full to full. And I probably wouldn't build this up past medium because that's what I did the first time I wore it, and that's when I saw more of the creasing that I don't love. But you don't see that as much if you're staying in the light coverage range. But I gotta say, I'm not 100% convinced this foundation is going to be worth it for everybody, because I just described this being best for light coverage. I've said that I do get some creasing with it. All of this makes me think that the ideal audience for this foundation is probably people who have pretty good skin, might be on the more young side, and probably this explains why it's big among a lot of beauty gurus right now, because that's y'all, no offense. For more mature skin, I would personally rank Shiseido's Synchro Skin higher than this, because that seems to have some kind of a blurring property to it. What that does on my forehead is incredible, whereas this, I kind of felt like I was fighting the creasing. And again, we're not talking about a lot of coverage, so if you're trying to hide blemishes, I'm just not sure. Thankfully, my skin has stayed quite clear during this trial, but I mean, if you're going for more full coverage, that's not the level at which this foundation wears best at. So I guess bottom line, it all depends. Maybe it's worth it for you if you fit into that specific box that I described, and if you don't, maybe it's not worth it for you. But overall, I am going to say I'm actually quite happy with it. I'm certainly going to be keeping it in my collection. When we were in Sephora, I was swatching the primers. They have a normal dry and a normal oily. They kind of just seem like hydrating primers to me. One's a little bit more hydrating than the other. But the powder, I'm kind of interested in the powder. It's a very interesting finish, very sheer, very silicone rich as well, but surprisingly nice. So well done. I'm excited about this entire direction for Bite. And if you guys found this video helpful, please make sure to give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.